Okay. Right, can I welcome all members and officers to today's meeting of Council, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. The meeting has been recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their camera on at that point. But I'd ask that, with the exception of myself as Mayor, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, you should use the hands up icon on the screen. Will come to you in the order received requests. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. Please also only use the chat function to indicate if you have joined or are leaving the meeting. In the event the Council requires a vote on any item of business before today, the Democratic Services Officer will call out the name of each member present in turn and request them to vote verbally, either for, against or abstain. Then ask the officer to announce the result of the vote and Council's decision on the item. Officers from Democratic Services and ICT will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting. And where necessary, we'll mute those not being used. We'll also ask officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting, and they too should ensure that microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. So we'll now go through today's agenda. And item 1 is apologies for absence, and can let you know at the moment the apologies from Councillor Callum Webster, Councillor Jeff Tinsley, Councillor Altaf Hussain and Councillor Steve Smith. Are there any others, please? Hang on. Councillor Baldwin.
Apologies. Apologies from Councillor David White and from Councillor Nicole Burnett, please.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. I will have to leave the meeting about 3:30. I have a hospital appointment.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Alex Williams.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Elaine Venables hopes to join the meeting at 3:30 p.m. and Councillor Sorrel Dendy is having technical difficulties and hopes to join the meeting as soon as possible.
Good. Councillor Janice Lewis.
Yes, apologies from Councillor David Lewis. He will be late attending the meeting, but will be here. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tim Thomas, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Apologies, I'm going to have to leave at 4:30, although I suspect the meeting might be finished by then.
It may well do. Okay, thank you. Let us know. I think that's everybody. That I've still got Anne showing from Councillor Alex Williams, Councillor Tim Thomas, Councillor Janice. Councillor Alex Williams, you up down. Councillor Tim Thomas, you still got Anne showing? Yeah, all right. No further apologies, I take it. Okay. Item 2 then. Declaration of interest. Received declarations of personal and prejudicial interest from members or officers in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct adopted by the Council 1st of September 2008. Are there any, please? Members or officers? Mark Shepherd, please, Chief Executive.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to declare a personal and prejudicial interest in item 6, as I am the Council's returning officer, and I will leave the meeting for that item, and it'll be presented by the monitoring officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any further? No further indications? No. All done that. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3, receive announcements. First one, a brief today from myself. The Mayor's Citizenship Awards have now been concluded, and after receiving over 30 nominations it's been decided that 22 of these have been successful. The standard of all nominations received has yet again been very high, and while they're all worthy of recognition, there are some that score higher than others. Nevertheless, all those who submitted nominations will be written to, thanking them for taking the time to participate in the process. There's nothing stopping them making another nomination next year. The presentation of the awards are now being arranged through either a personal visit by myself or possibly a presentation in the Mayor's Parlour, subject to appropriate risk assessments taking place, and will all be completed by the end of March. I'd like to thank the officers and also the Deputy Mayor who were involved in the process for their help and assistance, and for taking note of my comments in relation to possible amendments to the scheme for next year. Thank you. We'll now move to the Deputy Leader, Councillor Al Williams. Announcements, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As National Apprenticeship Week is running all this week, I want to provide a very brief update to members on how the Council's own apprenticeship scheme is progressing. Since it was launched in 2013, we have successfully supported 116 apprentices, many of whom have gone on to gain full employment with the Council. We currently have 27 apprentices working across departments, ranging from business support, marketing, social care and procurement, where they make an invaluable contribution. The apprentice scheme allows us, as a local authority, to recruit new talent. It enables people to develop professional skills and gain valuable experience, all while earning a wage and working towards an accredited qualification. Members may wish to let their constituents know about our apprenticeship programme and to advise them to look out for future opportunities via the job pages on the corporate website. I'd also like to thank all of our apprentices for their hard work, particularly during the difficult circumstances of the last 2 years, and wish them the very best of luck with their careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Next one, Cabinet Member Communities, Councillor Stuart Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure councillors will be all too aware of the problems caused by unadopted roads within the county borough. These are streets that have not been adopted by the council, where the upkeep remains the responsibility of residents and property owners. A new pilot scheme from Welsh Government has provided £230,000 to bring local unadopted streets up to a high standard so that it can become the responsibility of the council. Intended to enable councils and Welsh Government to better understand the cost implications for tackling the historical backlog of such streets throughout Wales, Ynys in Porthcawl was selected based on its factors such as the poor condition and its footways and concrete road and the number of properties it serves. Now, footways and carriageways have been reconstructed, highway drainage has been repaired, and further work is being carried out to ensure Ynys is suitable for adoption. We have received some very positive comments from householders of the work, and it has proven to be a big success. A review of other unadopted streets is underway, and we are reporting back on the scheme to Welsh Government. Hopefully this will lead to further funding being made available and will enable us to target further unadopted streets in the county borough, and I hope to bring you more news on this soon. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Next one, we have Cabinet Member Social Services and Early Help, Councillor Jane Gebbie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Only one very brief announcement for members today. You may have seen the recent announcement from Welsh Government that is increasing the amount of support available to eligible residents via its Household Support Fund. Designed to help communities cope with a huge rise in energy bills, the £100 relief payment has now been increased to £200. It is available to households where someone is claiming universal benefit, income support, working tax credits, means-tested welfare benefits, income-related job seekers allowance or employment and support allowance. Needless to say, I hope that all members are publicising this within our local wards and are encouraging all eligible households to apply for it. The council has already contacted thousands of people whom we believe are entitled to receive the payment, and applications can also be made through the council's My Account facility. There is a deadline of the 28th of February to make an application, and people who have already received a £100 payment under the scheme will not need to reapply, as they will automatically receive the remainder within the next few weeks. Nobody should be without warmth and heating during these cold winter months, and we hope that this will support some of the poorest and most vulnerable residents within the county borough. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next Cabinet Member, Wellbeing and Future Generations, Councillor Danisha Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just one announcement from me as well this month. It's an announcement of a short break programme which is available to local unpaid carers, which members may want to let their residents know about. Launched in partnership with Halo Leisure, Barvo, the Council and Welsh Government, this programme enables carers to access a wide range of facilities at Bridgend Life Centre free of charge every Tuesday between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. with facilities ranging from a steam room, sauna and ice room to heated lounge beds and a toning suite. Carers can make the most of specialist relaxation therapies and advice on diet and nutrition. Most importantly, the programme includes replacement care, which will be provided by South East Wales Carers Trust to enable unpaid carers to take a break from their caring responsibilities. If members know any unpaid carers within their wards who would benefit from this free initiative, please ask them to contact Bridgend Life Centre and ask for the Active Community Support Officer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cabinet Member of Education and Regeneration, Councillor Charles Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Inspectors from Estyn have made a number of recent visits to some of our local schools, and I would like to draw members' attention to the outcomes. Following visits in November 2021, Plasnewydd Primary School, Maesteg, and Ogmore Vale Primary School have been judged by Estyn to have made sufficient progress against the Education and Training Inspectorate's recommendations, and they have been formally removed from special measures. Cefn Cribw Primary School has also been removed from the list of schools requiring Estyn review, after it was deemed to have made appropriate progress in respect of key issues for action. Following an inspection carried out shortly before Christmas, inspectors have confirmed the school has developed sufficient capacity for bringing about further improvements. Archbishop Magrath Catholic High School was also reviewed in December. Inspectors have noted that good progress has been made and are continuing to monitor the school for the time being to ensure this can continue. All other schools in the county of Bridgend have been classified as either good or satisfactory in their most recent Estyn inspections. I'd also like to remind members that Bridgend was the first member authority of Central South Consortium to be inspected by Estyn as an education authority. This was a few years ago, and while that round of inspections has been interrupted by COVID, I still hear representatives of the other four authorities in CSC saying that their ambition is to have as good an inspection report as Bridgend. In the case of the school inspections I've just mentioned, I would like to congratulate school leaders, teachers and support staff for their ongoing efforts, together with parents, governors and our school improvement officers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Next item, Chief Executive, Mark, do you have any announcements?
No announcements this month, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Okay, that's item 3 complete. Then we'll move on to item 4 then, to receive announcements by the leader. Over to you, leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We were pleased to confirm yesterday support for the Senior Open Golf Championship returning to Royal Porthcawl Golf Club in 2023. As Europe's only senior major championship golf tournament, this is a major event which brings with it lasting benefits for tourism and the local economy. When we first hosted it back in 2014, more than 43,000 people visited the county borough, and it was hailed as a success which generated millions of pounds for the local economy and drew an international television viewing audience with millions of viewers across the globe. We look forward to bringing you updates as the plans and preparations for the tournament develop. Another major development in regional tourism took a step closer to becoming a reality recently when the transformational Avon Valley Adventure Resort project in neighbouring Neath Port Talbot, but on our doorstep, was granted conditional planning permission. Impressive new development is part of the Wild Fox Resorts brand and has been likened to a valley set self-contained centre park style holiday and leisure site. Members may recall that the project was first mooted by applicants Avon Valley Limited. However, the project has since been taken over by the multinational Salamanca Group, which has a track record of 20 years of successful development, and they are driving the plans forward at a rapid pace. It hundreds of new jobs and provide significant social and economic advantages, which could also benefit the communities, the Valley's communities of Bridgend County Borough. I've asked for a detailed update, and when that is provided, I will of course share it with all members. Finally, work is gathering pace on plans for how the site of the former Ford engine plant will be used in future. Council officers have been working closely alongside the Ford Motor Company and the commercial real estate and investment specialists, CBRE. The meeting is scheduled to take place later this month, where we shall be discussing plans for the proposed redevelopment of the site, timescales, marketing opportunities, and more. Intention is to enable the site to be brought to market within the first quarter of 2022. As members know, until its closure, the engine plant was a major employer within South Wales. The 1.6 million square foot site remains a prime piece of commercially valuable land and one of the biggest industrial sites with potential for future development in the country. Both Ford and CBRE tell us it is attracting strong interest, with at least one potential client having already made an approach about occupying the site. We should know more once the meeting has taken place, and I will bring you further news as the situation develops further. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Leader, for that. Item 4. Item 5 next, the advanced voting pilot scheme at local elections, May 2022. I think, Mark, over to you, Mark, you're taking this, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully members will find this a positive item. This report's purpose is to seek approval to participate in the advanced voting pilots, allowing voting at the local elections in May 2022 in certain polling stations on the Tuesday and Wednesday before polling day on Thursday, the 5th of May. This has been something that's been discussed and shared regularly with group leaders over the past 6 months or so, and of course is an initiative intended to increase the number of people who vote and increase participation in local democracy. If I go to the background, first of all, Welsh Government approached local authorities back in July 2021, requesting expressions of interest for people who may be interested in participating in advanced voting pilots. In the end, ourselves, Torfaen, Caerphilly and Blaenau Gwent have been the authorities that have taken this forward. As I say, following regular consultation with group leaders, the nature of the Bridgend pilot was in terms of opening polling stations in specific wards on the Tuesday and Wednesday before the polling day, and then also to include a separate pilot within a school solely eligible for pupils in that school. Since that time, there has, of course, been a process of dialogue with Welsh Government officials to make sure that whatever's proposed was both viable and lawful. And there's now, at this point, a high degree of confidence that everything is in place to deliver an effective and successful pilot. We have, however, been recently advised that best practice would dictate that a formal decision is required from full council on our participation, and hence the nature of the report today. If I then take you to paragraph 4.1, which talks about the wards that have been chosen for the advanced pilot, and they are listed in paragraph 4.1, both in brackets, the previous wards, sorry, the current wards, and then obviously from the boundary changes, some new wards. And there is set out in paragraph 4.2 a very clear rationale for the choice of those wards, as indeed there has to be. Essentially, we've identified the 5 wards that both rank the overall lowest turnout rates and lowest turnout rates at the polling stations by means of identifying the wards where we think we could potentially make the most difference. So you will see that essentially we have a baseline that tells us ordinarily what the turnout might be in these wards. And then obviously by introducing a pilot, we would hope to see that it would have some impact or effect in terms of overall turnout in those specific wards. In paragraph 4.3, I just make mention of the fact that, of course, there, as I say, there have been boundary changes. That does also mean that there are 3 additional wards in Cefn Cribble, Coedwich Lower and Ysowdra that are also included because they're now part of those other wards as well. So I hope that makes sense. If I then briefly in paragraph 4.4 talk to you about the separate school pilot, this is unique. We are the only authority doing this, and therefore it's attracted a great deal of interest from Welsh Government and the Electoral Commission. So what we're intending doing here is for Cunvic Comprehensive School is introducing an advanced voting pilot there by opening the school, a polling station on the Tuesday between 8:30 AM and 4:30 PM for the purpose of age 16 plus registered students and trying to encourage them to vote in advance rather than having to attend one of the other polling stations, though of course they can still do that, and I should make that point for all of these pilots. You still have that option as well to vote on the day should you wish. To supplement that, we're also hoping to run a politics pilot in Cunvic Comprehensive as well, by means again of engaging the pupils of that age and encouraging them to participate, as I say, in the democratic process. 4.6 just goes on to say that these pilot wards represent approximately 27% of the county borough's voting, and I think that provides a solid foundation to run the pilots and assess whether doing this, as I say, does increase overall turnout rates and make a difference. You'll obviously, I'll state the obvious, but obviously you can't do it everywhere, because if you do it everywhere, you haven't really got a comparison either in terms of what difference it might make within that particular election. If I just move then quickly to the financial implications, just to reassure members that all the additional costs incurred to run these pilots will be funded via a grant from Welsh Government. There is no cost to the authority, but obviously we are getting a lot of support from Welsh Government because it's in their interest as well as ours that this is deemed a success at the end of the process. And that, Mr. Mayor, takes you to the recommendation in paragraph 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Members, can I take the recommendation? Mover and seconder, please.
Move, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Leader, would like to speak? Over to you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only briefly to say that I welcome this report. I welcome this pilot. The way that we have voted fundamentally hasn't changed for decades and decades, and yet society continues to change very rapidly, and particularly now with the franchisement of 16 and 17-year-olds who for the first time will be able to vote in local elections. I think it's important that we encourage as much participation as we can of those young people. So the pilot at Cunvic Comprehensive School is vital to that, but also the opportunity for all voters in all the advanced voting pilot wards for them to vote in advance of the the usual polling day, and they'll still have the opportunity to vote on polling day as well. And I know that we will work as hard as we can to promote awareness of these arrangements to increase participation as much as we can. So very happy to support the pilot, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leader. It's been moved and seconded. I don't see any other members wishing to speak. So take it all in favour of that. If you're all quite, are you nothing? I take it all in favour. Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's item 5 done then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll now leave the meeting for this next item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and we'll call you back in then. Item 7. Okay, so item 6 next. Just make sure Mark's left. Yep. Yep. So item 6 next. Over to Kelly. Yeah. The local election fees, county borough and town and community councils. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the purposes of the recording, my name is Kelly Watson, Monitoring Officer. The purpose of this report today is to seek Council's approval of the election fees proposed to be applied for the County Borough and the Town and Community Council's election from May 2022. Members will find these fees appended to your report at Appendix 1. Legislation provides that the County Borough Council shall pay all expenditure incurred by the returning officer in relation to the county.
All right, somebody's got the microphone on.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. If I can continue, as I said, legislation provides that the County Borough Council shall pay all expenditure incurred by the returning officer in relation to the County Borough elections, and that expenditure incurred in relation to the Town and Community Council elections shall be recovered from those councils. The level of fees proposed for the returning officer and staff to be applied to all local elections and by-elections from May 2022 are attached at Appendix 1. The fees for the staff have been linked to specific pay points on the council's pay scales so that the fees can be adjusted in line with any annual pay awards. The additional administration costs are difficult to assess until the extent of contested elections is known, as this significantly impacts on the workload of the electoral services team. Additional payments to electoral staff during recent major elections have ranged from £2,000 to £4,000, depending upon the specific roles and responsibilities. It is therefore proposed that the returning officer is granted specific powers to determine the level of payments for additional administrative work. The financial implications are set out at paragraph 8.1. As you can see, the costs associated with holding the forthcoming County Borough elections are met from a earmark reserve, and the costs, as I've mentioned, associated with Town and Community Council elections will be recovered from those councils. I therefore take you to the recommendations at paragraph 9, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. So members, the recommendations at 9192, mover and seconder, please.
Move. Move second.
Second. Thank you. We moved and seconded. We have Councillor Nora Clark to speak. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I just wanted to focus on Appendix 1, just in one particular area of the fee for the polling clerk. I understand that the fees are based on pay scales, but I do feel that £150 for 15 hours work is quite low. You know, working from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes I know the facilities, you know, they've got use of toilets, etc. But some places are quite cold, etc., etc. And I just thought it was quite low for 15 hours work.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Kelly, do you want to add anything to that, or is that set? The fees are set.
There is some discretion with the fees, but obviously Gary Ennis, the manager, he will have looked at neighbouring authorities to try to make sure there is some consistency. I can obviously pick that up with Gary, Councillor Clark, and perhaps he can respond to you directly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. That'd be good. Right, so that's been moved and seconded. I don't see any further indications. MD wishes to speak on this item, so I take it we're all in favour. It's been moved and seconded. Yep, okay. Happy's quiet now, so I think you're all happy. So that's item 6. Can we now make sure that we can bring Mark Shepherd, Chief Executive, back into the meeting, please, right before we start item 7?
We've asked him to come back in, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just give him a minute.
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mark. Right, great. Okay, then, so we're on to item 7 now, then, capital program update. And Caris, what would you, Caris Lord? You take Caris, you've taken this capital program item update, item 7. Thank you.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for the purpose of the recording, just to confirm, I'm Caris Lord and I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance Management and Change. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from Council to revise the capital programme for the period 21-22 to 2030-31. The capital programme was last approved by Council on the 19th of January this year. I would like to bring to members' attention that there are a number of financial pressures arising now as a result of market conditions. Many of these are the impact as a result of the pandemic and also of Brexit. And they are impacting on the programme in a number of ways. In summary, we're seeing an increased price of materials, and that's due to inflation, but also additional costs due to Brexit. We are experiencing some supply chain difficulties, and again, this is resulting in higher prices, but also some delays on completion of schemes while we're waiting for materials to come on board. And also we're experiencing an inability to recruit to some key posts, and this is both posts within the council, but also within the companies that we are contracted with. These again are increasing some contract costs and impacting on the deadlines that we have for the schemes to be completed. And members will see some examples of the impact of that shown in paragraph 3.7 in the report in front of you this afternoon. So as I've just said, the capital programme was last approved by Council in January. However, since then, there have been a number of new capital schemes that now need to be included in the programme, some of which are either wholly or partly grant funded, along with others which need some amendment. So just in summary, Mr. Mayor, these schemes include funding in the capital programme to purchase a pool of additional electric powered vehicles as part of our drive towards the net zero carbon 2030 target. This is a scheme that has been impacted by supply chain issues and the vehicles have been delayed, but for reasons that are outside the control of this authority. In addition, there's £3 million being approved into the programme to fund the Metro Plus scheme, which is predominantly funded via the Cardiff Capital Region and the Local Transport Fund, with a small amount of £82,000 being funded by the council. So this allocation funds work on the Porthcawl Metrolink and the Pencoed Level Crossing and Penprustig Road Bridge. There's also money in there in relation to remediation works at the Iwenny Road Industrial Estate to open up that site for development, and this is fully funded via the Cardiff Capital Region. There's additional funding to support the development of the Bryn Melyn Children's Hub. Again, this one has seen the impact of increased costs through the tendering process. Inclusion in the capital programme of funding towards the work on properties in Caira, following an in-principle offer from Welsh Government of funding to support this scheme. Money in relation to new ICT equipment in schools, and additional funding from Welsh Government to support the unadopted roads pilot scheme in Porthcawl, as was referred to by Councillor Baldwin earlier in this meeting. And also the provision of additional temporary accommodation for Heronsbridge Special School. There's also a request in this report, Mr. Mayor, to ring fence the additional receipt received from the sale of land at Porthcawl to support the required infrastructure works as part of the Porthcawl regeneration scheme. We're suggesting that this is earmarked due to, as I said, increased costs which are being experienced elsewhere in the programme. So these proposed changes will increase the capital programme to £50 million in this financial year and to £224 million over the period of this 10-year programme. So I'd just like to refer you to the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, which is that the Council approves the revised capital programme at Appendix A of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Caris. Members, take you to the recommendation, as just been said, to approve the revised capital programme Appendix A. Can I have mover and seconder, please?
Move the report.
Ross Pennell Thomas is hand up.
Second, Chair.
Second. Thank you. Right, if you move the second, we'll now take speakers. We have Councillor Ross Thomas first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Stuart, for noticing my hand was up. A couple of questions across the report, Mr. Mayor. On Owenny Road Industrial Estate and the securing of the £3.5 million from the City Region deal, obviously very much to be welcomed. I wondered what assessment had been made of external factors outside of the council's control, as you've already mentioned, Carys, in carrying out the necessary remediation and infrastructure works on site, and whether that could hamper progress. I've got a couple of other questions, Mr. Mayor. Not sure if you want me to answer them in one go or.
The couple mean two or three, or to give
two questions.
Right, if you put the two up, perhaps Carys can take them one by one. Then. But if you could put the two questions first.
Okay, fab. So on our bed, Mr. Mayor, I think the key figure here is 10. It's taken 10 years to get us to this point, and at more than 10 times the cost of the original programme of works. Needless to say, there will be heightened interest in the procurement process, use of materials, inspections, and overall satisfaction in what's going to be a challenging piece of work. So I wondered what avenues would be available to both members, residents and stakeholders to ensure transparent scrutiny throughout the lifetime of that project. And secondly, on the business case, I listened into Cabinet yesterday where the Chief Executive very helpfully offered some initial thinking and insight into what the programme of works might look like. And I recognise and appreciate there's still some way to go on that, on that particular piece of work. But was there not an opportunity then to share some early thinking about the proposed capital investment, and importantly, how and when these issues will be resolved on BBC Wales over the weekend, when disappointingly no political representation was fielded by the authority? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I just remind members first, we're talking about the capital programme and approving the finance for a scheme, not the details of future schemes. Thank you. But, okay,
just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, I think this is a wider point on how we engage on elements of this capital programme outside of the four walls of the chamber, which is what my question is all about.
Yep, but today's report is a financial report. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Carys, are you able to respond to those points?
I can certainly pick up the first one in relation to the Owenny Road Industrial Estate and what work we will do to make sure that we monitor the progress of that, and also that, I suppose, the risks associated with the issues that I've already talked about this afternoon in relation to costs and timelines. I know Janine's team is working hard to do that. We are aware of these pressures and we're now monitoring them all really right across the capital programme, hence the references early in the report actually to the issues that are being dealt with. If there are any delays or slippages, or we have any issues to do with costs, then obviously we will be reporting those back to council as soon as we're aware of them. But I am assured that the team is working hard to manage that project going forward within timelines and within cost envelopes to the best of their ability. I think in relation to sorry.
Thank you, Carys. I was going to ask in relation to the other ones, perhaps more in relation to scrutiny, and perhaps the leader may want to comment later after everybody's had a chance. Unless the Chief Exec, Mark Shepherd, could you like to comment at the moment on that one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, two things. I mean, if the member would like any more detail on Owenny Road, I know Janine is willing to try and give any more if that's required. In terms of Arbed, I think Councillor Pennell Thomas did mention that I did try yesterday at yesterday's cabinet meeting to try and explain as best I could about what the process may be, but just for the benefit of all members. I think the first thing to say is that we just need to bear in mind we haven't submitted the business case yet, so there are some detail that clearly is unknown at the moment, and we won't know until that's been approved properly by Welsh Government. But in terms of our intended process and what we're likely to include in such a business case, we are anticipating there will be a significant period of work around engagement, in particular with local residents and householders from the eligible households within Cairo, but also, of course, with local members, so there's an understanding of what that process may be, what the realistic timescales may be, and how we intend going about a process to give confidence to all of those stakeholders that it'll be done thoroughly and properly and done well. So I can give you that assurance. What I can't yet give you is definitive timelines or details, but of course that remains to be seen. But obviously we all recognise that one of the factors here is gaining the confidence of local residents and of local members, and that will be an imperative in terms of what we prepare and do. So I hope that's helpful. But I think the other thing it's probably just worth mentioning is that in general sense, and it may require a political answer, but in a general sense, there'll be plenty of opportunity in due course to engage properly with whether that's the press, whether that's local people or whatever. One of the things I think we have to be careful that we don't do is go prematurely on this when we're not in a position at this stage to answer some of the inevitable questions that will come from residents in particular, about scope of works, about timing of works, about the detail of how it's going to go about. Absolutely in due course, those reassurances will be required. But I would remind members again that what we're asking for here is a commitment from the Council's capital programme so that we can submit a business case, including a contribution for ourselves. And when that is done and approved, of course, we're in a position at that point to have far more detail about how the scheme will run moving forward. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's very helpful. We have a couple of speakers. We'll go next, Councillor Kenneth Watts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, my point or question is on page 17 of the report, the Cardiff Capital Region Metro Plus, and in particular where it refers to the top of page 18, the second paragraph, regarding the Porthcawl Metro link, which was initially an open structure costing 400,000, and that, but then it's decided to make a more substantial building, and with the build cost being almost 2 million. And whilst I think fortuitously the sentence goes on to say there's been no opportunity for an engineer to structure as it stands without fundamentally changing its design, there may be unknown additional costs during the tender. What I'm referring to here is the letter that we've been made aware of now from Welsh Water, saying that there is a rising main immediately under where this bus terminus is proposed to go. That is obviously going to have, in my view, quite a substantial impact on the overall cost. Has that been factored in yet? And what do we know more about that? But more surprisingly for me is, why didn't we know that there was a rising main under this site, and for Welsh Water to object most strongly in the way that their letter is framed? I just wondered if some answer could be given to that, please.
Hey, Janine, are you able to help with that?
Yes, of course, Mr. Mayor, happy to do that. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities. Yes, Councillor, it's a good point that you've made, but just to reassure you, we did a tremendous amount of site investigations before we designed the Metro Plus facility, and we do know there's a Welsh Water rising main through that site. That was one of the first things that our consultant made us aware of. Now, the letter that you will see from Welsh Water is a pretty standard letter that they, as a utility regulator, they have to send us. And of course, it's on the Development Control Committee because we have to put all responses live on the system. We have been discussing amendments with Welsh Water. They would like us to slightly move the shelter, the Metro link, a few metres further into the site. That isn't a problem for us. It is something that we can do quite easily. It won't fundamentally affect the design of the structure. So that's something we're doing. So just to reassure you, really, for us, the letter did seem quite sharp in its manner, dare I say, but yes, it's a letter that we're quite used to having from utility operators. They've got their regulations. They have to, of course, explain what it is they want delivered on that site. So we've managed to overcome that. Now back to the original part of your question in terms of the design of that facility. When we first put that facility together, it was a very rudimental bus lay-by. There was no real shelter there. And what we wanted to make sure is that in Porthcawl, as part of the redevelopment and our bold ambitions really for the regeneration of the town, that we had something that was worthy of that seafront location, something that provided shelter because it can get very windy, wet and windy down there. And what was very important for us as well is that it had the right sustainable credentials. We didn't want to put a shelter in that had a very bad carbon footprint. So what we do have is a Metrolink facility that is undercover, provides shelter. There's a waiting area there, a dedicated waiting area. It also has a green roof. It has a rainwater garden. And it will provide down the one end of the Metrolink itself a separate waiting room where we could look at having some concessions in there, such as tea, coffee, etc. So it gives us the opportunity to really have an enhanced facility for Porthcawl. The Metro Plus monies altogether, there was 3 million made available for us. So the way that we looked at that is we're going to use 2 million for the Porthcawl facility, and then the other 1 million is for the design of the Penprisk Bridge scheme, the very ambitious strategic transport scheme there. And then when we looked at the Pyle Park and Ride previously, we've now got some real ambition. But what we'd like to do in Pyle, not just the park and ride facility, but we've got strategic transport ambitions. There was a cabinet report that went last month about possibly relocating Pyle railway station in the future as part of the LDP. So just to let you know the rationale behind why we wanted a building that had additional facilities and also had those green credentials. So I hope that reassures you, Councillor.
If I may come back, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Watts, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, just on the cost, I mean, how much impact financially is this going to have on moving the terminal slightly within the 2 million that you've put aside? Is there going to be an increase on that, or is it part of the 2 million?
No, it's part of the 2 million, Councillor Watts. All we are doing at this stage is there's nothing built yet, so we haven't committed any monies. We're just moving the building a couple of metres further into the site. So at the minute, it's just amended design cost, which is a very small amount of money compared to the delivering of the scheme itself. But we will have to change the location plan to show it in a slightly different location. It'll be 2 metres further into the site to not be so close to that rising main. And then we will submit it back for planning permission. It'll come back as an amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Janine.
Okay, thank you both. Thanks, Janine. That one. Next, speak Councillor Keith Edwards. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, firstly, may I say that I share the sentiments of Councillor Ross Thomas. 10 years has been 10 years far too long, and I feel a profound sense of shame and embarrassment that the poor people of Caira have been subjected to this terrible disaster that's befell them. Something that has been brought on them by this authority. I take on board the remarks made by the Chief Exec as to how we're going to progress this. But I would like to ask the question that is being asked by certain people who've been part of this scheme. Will any thought be given within this £3.5 million umbrella to reimbursing people who've already spent substantial amounts of money through no fault of their own, bringing their property back up to a reasonable standard? Is there anything within this 3.5 million within the capital programme to reimburse those people? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. On the finances itself, within that envelope of money, is there Mark? Can you respond to that, please?
Yes, so I'll respond to Councillor Edwards on two matters. I think first of all, there clearly is a huge amount of regret for the role the authority did have within this, but I do need to remind members that the vast majority of the properties the authority had nothing to do with at all. So when we say it's been brought on by the council, I do think we need to be careful with our words there. And one of the things I said to Cabinet yesterday is that we had a conviction from the outset in pursuing this since 2019, that what we wanted to do was come up with a scheme to redress the issues for all of the affected people in Caer, and that's what we've done. So I think the authority absolutely takes its share of the responsibility, but I think we need to be careful that we don't land all of that on the authority when in fact the council had nothing to do at all to do with the bulk of the work, the bulk of the failing work there. In terms of the other element about compensation, the truth is I don't know, because we haven't submitted the business case, but I think we need to be clear here, and I wouldn't want to mislead members or indeed raise expectations, that the funding that Welsh Government have provided provisionally for this has come from the Minister for Climate Change, and it comes from a pot of money around energy efficiency. So very much the aim of Welsh Government here is to put right the wrongs of previous work and to ensure the benefits that were intended from the original scheme in terms of energy efficiency and addressing issues such as fuel poverty are put right by essentially stripping off the cladding that was failing and putting new on. And that is my understanding of what the scheme is. I don't think that I can commit at this stage that there is anything in terms of compensation. I have obviously an amount of sympathy and empathy for the points that Councillor Edwards is making, but I think it's important that you understand that the scope of the works here is essentially to offer those householders a remedy where we will take off the cladding that was put up and is failing, and essentially offer to put up new cladding, and recognising that the technology has moved on considerably in the 10 years since the original work was done, and that recognising also that these kind of retrofit schemes are going to be essential moving forward to meet decarbonisation targets. So come back to what I said earlier, really, what the process for me will be about ensuring that we engage and communicate sufficiently so that's understood, so that people understand that this should be a hugely beneficial matter to those householders. But I don't think reimbursement is necessarily what Welsh Government are looking at, and of course they're putting up the bulk of the funding. But I come back to the fact that we haven't yet completed our business case and we haven't submitted it, and of course in due course I'll be able to answer much more clearly about the specific scope of the scheme and what would be eligible and what would not. I hope that again that helps.
Thank you, Mark. Yep, that helps. And we now have got Councillor Alex Williams next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 questions on this report, if I may. Would you like me to take them one by one, because they're
3 separate items, yeah?
Yeah, 3 separate items. One on the Metro Plus scheme, one on Arbed, and then one on unallocated funds. So perhaps it may be best if,
yeah, one by one,
with your permission, one by one. The first one is on the timescale and the delivery of the Metro Plus scheme. Now, I think on page 18 of our packs, it mentions that it's vital that the scheme is progressed and completed on time. Otherwise, there's a risk that any remaining Metro funding will be diverted elsewhere, leaving the council at financial risk. So I know from previous conversations with Janine that there was a target to submit a bid to the Cardiff regional city deal or Welsh Government by June of this year. Now, with regards to the Pencoed connectivity programme and the Penprys Bridge, we've just gone through stage 3 of the WellTag process and through the public consultation. So this seems to be ambitious. So can I ask, Janine, whether you can give us some more information about when the timescale has to be completed by, to ensure that the authority isn't put at any financial risk? That's my first question.
Okay, thank you. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Williams, of course, I can answer that question for you. Now, we are applying to the Levelling Up Fund for the monies for the Penprys Bridge project. As yet, they haven't indicated when the deadline is. They said that initially, they said the submission deadline for that bid would be in June of this year, and that is what we're working towards. We have regular meetings regionally as economic development directors with the representatives of the Levelling Up Fund, and they are going to issue guidance on this second round of applications. They're hoping to issue guidance in the next month, and we're hoping to get confirmation of the date of the submission. Now, a couple of things that should be made clear, and you're right on quite a number of them. We are continuing with the design of that scheme. It's incredibly complex, as you could imagine. We've just finished the consultation, and lots of people have come forward with suggestions, and some people have come forward with questions about what will happen to their land if the bridge is designed in such a way. So what we want to do is to work with Network Rail to design that bridge out, and they are the right people to do that with, because of course this is their area of expertise. And then the idea is we progress this project as far as we can, and then we submit whatever the date is. The date might be in June or May. Now, as far as we get in designing up that scheme, that is the submission that we will arrive at. Now, of course, when it comes to very large infrastructure schemes like this, they can take, in essence, a year to a year and a half to design up. So what we won't have finished the design by the time it comes to submitting the bid, but the Levelling Up team from UK government have said that they wouldn't expect that. They just wanted an indication of the design and that we're progressing it well. Now, the other point you made is absolutely correct. The scheme is going to finish in the next 2 years, the bid funding, and we've already written to UK government, and what we've said to them is it's very unlikely we will finish this scheme within the envelope of the Levelling Up Fund timetable as is, and it's very unlikely that any infrastructure scheme in Wales could be completed within those tight timescales. So we've not had a response as yet to that query, but it's something that our MPs were very keen to pick up on our behalf and lobby. And some of the informal soundings we've had back is that, yes, that is widely recognised, that when it comes to infrastructure schemes, they're so large and complex of nature that there may be a requirement to extend the funding and the timescales on those particular schemes. Now, what they're saying is they probably won't extend the timescale on schemes, other schemes such as building or renovation schemes, but for very high level strategic transport schemes, they're going to look at that for us. Otherwise, you are right. If we cannot have the money spread over the whole cost of the scheme and the whole time of the scheme, then unfortunately, I don't think the authority could start the scheme. Because currently we're looking at 18 million on design as is. And of course, we wouldn't be able to fund that on our own. So we are heavily reliant on help from Levelling Up Fund. So as soon as we know some of those answers, Councillor Williams, we can get back to you and let you know. But at the minute, we are continuing with the design as far as we can, working with partners, liaising with everybody in Pencode, and we hope to get that bid in June and some answers on the timescale for the grant. Thank you.
Janine. Councillor Williams.
Great, thank you very much.
If you can be.
Yeah, sorry, I will be brief. Thank you very much, Janine, for that comprehensive response. Just on the RBED scheme then, and I'll focus on the finances as you've recommended, Mr. Mayor. Of course, it's regrettable that £855,000 of the council's money will have to be spent on a scheme which shouldn't have happened in the first place, and it's absolutely key that we redress the failures of the past. But I'd like to raise for members' attention, and this is on page 19 of our packs, the comments which Mark Shepherd, our Chief Executive, made at Cabinet yesterday regarding the delivery of the project and the procurement and tendering of the project, and then the final delivery, which is likely to be spread over 2 years. And I understand that £855,000 has been put into the capital programme. So my question, I suppose, is why has it been front-loaded into this particular financial year when it could be spread over 2 different financial years if the majority of the project is being delivered in the next financial year? So that's my first question on RBED. The second one is, given the fact that the surveys and feasibility studies haven't been done to present the business case, is there a risk of additional funding being needed in future years? And you mentioned that a bid would be going in for the UK government eco scheme for funding for a contribution towards this scheme. What is the likelihood of receiving that funding, and what what level of funding might we expect from that? So those are the three questions that I have on the RBID scheme, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. I didn't think there were three questions on RBID. I thought there was one on RBID, but that's three. If Mark, is it Mark? Can you respond to that, please?
Certainly, I will try, Councillor Williams. If I can remember the three. In turn, I mean the profiling of the council's money, I think, is a fair point. It may well be that we don't need all of our 855 this year. I suppose that rather depends on, again, the business case and establishing with Welsh Government what the expectations are and what we need to pay for, and essentially what their funding will need to cover. But you are right. I think there is an element of front loading where our expenditure will be necessary. That will include surveys on all of those 104 homes. There will also be an engagement plan, as was discussed earlier. And then I think some of our expenditure will then fall later post work or during work around QA and building control and the kind of things that that I talked about yesterday. But I think that's a fair point about the profiling, and it is possible that profiling may be wrong. In terms of whether it will cost more, one of the things I explained to Cabinet yesterday was that I think this is prudent, despite there being various unknowns, that the original estimate by New Vision was that it would cost £16,000 to £20,000 per home to strip off the existing cladding and put up new. But that was a survey carried out over 2 years ago. What we've now done, based on what Karis explained earlier, actually, is just a recognition, really, that capital costs are going up everywhere, is increased that up to £30,000 per home. But we simply do not know whether it'll really cost £30,000 per home until we've surveyed each one. And you would expect, wouldn't you, that there won't be one consistent figure for each home. It might depend on the nature of damage to each of those homes. So there may well be some difference per home, but we've taken the prudent view that there are 104 homes. If we allow £30,000 for each, plus the extras I've described in terms of the project management, the surveys, etc., then you get up to that figure of 3.5 as a reasonable estimate. But what I will say is this again is subject to the market. We don't intend doing this ourselves. Our business case will set out that we intend procuring experts to do this work, as you'd expect, and of course therefore it depends on the market and what people come back with that price. And I think your final question was about the UK government funding. It won't be a bid, as I understand it, and I don't think it necessarily directly involves us. The situation is that Welsh Government continue to liaise with the UK government, because if you recall, of the 104 eligible homes, 79 of them were carried out using CESP funding, which is a UK government-sponsored scheme. Therefore, it is my view, and I believe it is Welsh Government's view, that it is only right and proper and fair that UK government contributes significantly towards the overall cost of the scheme. Now, should that happen, it would mean that the other contributors, Welsh Government and ourselves, may well be able to reduce our overall contribution. But I said to Cabinet yesterday, I don't think we can go forward on that basis, because the risk for me, and the point's already been made today about the weight that the residents have had, is that I could feasibly be another year waiting for UK government to commit anything, and it may not happen. And I think it's important, therefore, that we move forward as soon as possible on the basis that the funding is there from ourselves and Welsh Government. I think we'll continue to push, quite rightly so, for UK government funding. But again, any UK government funding, as I understand it, is likely to come from their ECO scheme, which again is an energy efficiency scheme. So again, it's likely to be, if they did provide funding, it's likely to contribute to the element that puts new cladding up, because that would be the eligible element. So again, this is going to be reasonably complex once we've established the amounts that everyone's able to put in, the total cost of the scheme, the parameters of the scheme, about who pays for what. But I remain reasonably confident, but not overly so, that we may be able to force UK government's hand, because I do think there's a really significant responsibility for them here in terms of putting right something where, as I say, 3/4 of the homes were done, if you like, with their sponsored scheme, albeit through Ofgem and through the energy companies. So I hope that answers your three questions. If it doesn't, please come back to me. Thank you.
No, that's very kind, Mark, for your comprehensive response. And a very quick one, Mr. Mayor. I know other members want to come in. And just a quick one for Karis, if I may. I refer members to page 25 of our packs and the variability in unallocated funds. There seems to be a big variation between 3 million in some years and 300,000 in other years. Would you just be able to explain exactly why that might be the case?
Okay, Karis, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say, we do have unallocated funds in the budget, and that they're for a reason really, which is to manage unknown pressures. And as we move forward into future years, they are estimates, and they do get amended as we get updated information with regards to our settlements and such like. There is currently money in there for this year, but it will get rolled forward if it's not used. I think it's important to stress what's already in the report that we've had a look at, which is that we are experiencing a lot of pressures which are unusual, such as the impact of increasing prices, the additional spend in relation to the 2030 agenda as well. So we will be keeping that money in the budget in order to make sure that we can cover some of these additional costs. But the reason they fluctuate really is because they are estimates. They are based on what we know, and they will change over time as we allocate or otherwise that funding. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Williams.
That's great. Many thanks, Carys.
Okay, thank you both. Right, and thanks for those who are waiting. There's a couple of speakers that are waiting patiently. The next one is Councillor Paul Davies.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I welcome the report, Chair, and I also welcome the money being put in by the authority for this fiasco which has happened in Caira, which we all, we wish hadn't happened. We wish you didn't have to pay. I think we can all agree that we wish we didn't have to pay up to 850,000. I think no one in the room would argue with that. But at least we're getting somewhere now after all this time. So I've asked questions about this, Chair, since 2018 myself. I've sent emails in. I've got them on record. I've posted them on Facebook for anyone who wants to see them. I listen with interest to, and 10 years is too long. I do agree with Councillor Thomas, Pennell Thomas, and Councillor Edwards. 10 years is far, far too long. Since I've been elected, as I say, January 2018, I've been sending emails in about this. I listened intently to what people said. And Councillor Thomas made a point of the media, and the programme was on Sunday morning on the Sunday Politics, and the lack of, I can't remember the term he used now, but anyway, lack of response from the authority, I think what he said. But anyway, I'd just like to say, you give me an opportunity to speak today, which is something I haven't been given previous to this, because nobody has contacted me from the media or anywhere else on this matter apart from residents. I would quite happily have made a contribution to that programme on Sunday if I was approached. Nobody approached me. I've had no phone call. Nobody. So, we have to be careful when, the media side of this, and I know the media listen to this today. I hope they are. You'd think the first people I would have contacted would be the elected members of this ward, not members from other wards who've been quoted in Wales Online, on the TV programme, everywhere, Chair. And I believe there's a piece in the Gazette this very day, or this week, sorry, regarding this matter. And I'm been led to believe that's from a former leader. I don't know if that's true, but
Councillor Davies, I can see Kelly, we are straying off the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well, I'll leave it at that then, Chair. I just want to make that point. Thanks. Sorry, Kelly. I'll leave it there. I wasn't contacted anyway. That's all I'd like to say, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davies. And I say, can I remind members that we are dealing with the capital programme update report on finances today, and I appreciate there's a lot of sort of things people would like to say, but we need to try and concentrate on the report if we can. Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Amanda Williams, next.
Thanks very much. Part of my question has been answered. It was about whether there was compensation built into the figure on Arbed. The other part of the question was, are we expecting any potential claims in from residents with regards to injuries? Because I've seen in the press that some people have said they've got lung conditions. Are we expecting that we're going to have to put in some funds somewhere for that as well, please? Thanks.
Anybody response on funds, on finances, or possibly Mark?
I come back to the point you made. We're dealing with a capital programme item, and any claims, insurance claims or whatever, are dealt with through the authority's normal claim system. So I simply can't speculate about whether anyone would make a claim about us, but I would remind people that we're talking about the capital programme item today.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Exactly. Yeah, we are. A financial report we're dealing with today. I think that there's no further speakers that we the leader, so I think we can go to the leader now, and then we'll move on to the next item because no further indications after that. Leader, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I wanted to repeat that apology that I made on behalf of the authority yesterday, and I've made previously to the people that have been affected in Caerau. Just turn into the point that Councillor Penhale Thomas made about contact with residents. We will work on a communication and engagement plan, and that will be shared because it is important that we get that right with the residents in the community. Turn into the point that was made by Councillor Williams about Metrolink in Porthcawl, Chair. I just wanted to reassure Councillor Williams, I know a comprehensive response from Corporate Director for Communities, but to reassure him as the Chair of the Cardiff Capital Region Transport Authority, there is full commitment to the Porthcawl Metrolink scheme. It is one of the flagship schemes for Metro Plus. So I'm very confident that we can progress the scheme, and if there are issues around funding, then obviously there is some flexibility within the programme that recognises the challenges that all transport infrastructure projects face. So that I don't think will have an impact on the scheme. We will deliver on Metrolink for the county borough of Bridgend. It is more difficult with the Levelling Up Fund because it's a UK government project, and unlike the Metro Plus project, it's not completely within the responsibility of the region and Welsh Government. I do think that we should also welcome, I know we all welcome, the investment that will be made in Heronsbridge Special School. That school is currently full, and there is a very high level of demand and need for additional places for children with the most complex special needs in the County Borough of Bridgend, and this investment will enable more of those places to be offered to those families and to those children in the coming years. And also, I want to as well, Chair, welcome the commitment and the investment that we can make today into the net zero carbon fleet, particularly as members will know about the real difficulty we have in recruiting new domiciliary care workers. So the extra investment will enable us to develop a pool of electric powered vehicles, because we do know that there are some people that can drive but cannot afford or do not have their own personal motor vehicle, and that can be a barrier to recruitment, and we need to lift as many as those barriers as we can to recruit more domiciliary care workers. So welcome that as well, Mr. Mayor, and of course the extra investment and progress on the Bryn Menyn Children's Hub, because that's such an important part of our vision and programme to modernise services for our most vulnerable children in the County Borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So we're still on, like we said, capital programme update. It's been moved and seconded at the start before the debate, and I take it we're all in favour, but don't you anything different? Okay, all in favour of that report? So that's item 7 approved. Thank you. And we'll now move on to item 8 and information reports for noting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report today is to inform Council of the information reports for noting which have been published since your last meeting. At paragraph 4.5, you can see that there have been 2 reports published. One relates to an urgent delegated decision and the other is the member induction programme for 2022-2023. I'd kindly ask members to note that the publication of those documents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kelly. So members see the recommendation. We note the publication of documents listed in the report. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Seconded. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
There's no, I got nobody showing any questions, so that's for noting and be moved and seconded. Just got Councillor Williams with a question.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was a little bit
Thank you.
sorry, I was a bit slow coming in then. Yeah, my question is about the new member induction. I don't really know why I'm asking this because I won't be around to join in. But I noticed most of it is online, which is quite understandable in this time that we find ourselves in. I mean, as it's been for most of us the last 2.5, 3 years. But how about how will this affect councillors that one have got difficulty logging on, which we know some people up the valleys have, and those councillors that can't log on at all because of well, they just aren't capable of it, or they just really don't want to get involved with 21st century technology. Does that is that going to exclude councillors that you know, haven't got this sort of technology? Because really you can't get involved, can you, in sort of debates, and not debates. I don't mean you can get involved in debates. You get involved with oh, what you call it, when role play, things like that, or quizzes and things. If you just can't get in, if you just haven't got, you're not online. And we know ourselves that some members, I won't name them, just haven't been online the last 2.5 years. Can we honestly say that a councillor can now do his or her job without being online?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. The report is for noting, but it's a question. Albeit, I think it's essential these days. You have to be online. But Kelly, can we just add to the or give a brief response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This plan has been before Democratic Services Committee, and I think they had a discussion around some of those issues. So, you know, perhaps Councillor Venables would like to comment on what they discussed in Dem Services Committee. Under the new legislation, we have got a requirement now, and members have a requirement to be involved in hybrid meetings. So as an authority, we will be making equipment available to those members. And obviously when we have a new cohort in May, we will be training those members, and hopefully if there are barriers to them becoming involved online, if that's the route we need to take, then we can work with them to try to make them more confident and to give them the equipment they need to take part fully.
Okay, Councillor Julia Williams. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And we'll go to Councillor Alex Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm content to obviously note the report, but I did mention I'm a member of the I'm actually a member of the Democratic Services Committee, and I did mention at the time that I thought it would be appropriate if we extended Treasury management training to all members rather than just those members of the Audit Committee. So I'd appreciate if that were considered in the next induction programme.
Okay, thank you. Valid point. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Okay. There's no further indications for speakers, and we've moved and seconded the report, and I think we're all in favour, which is good. So we shall rapidly move to item 9, urgent items, which have not been notified of any urgent items. So at 16:20, I think it is, yeah, 16:20, that brings us to the close of today's council meeting.